Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. My name is Scott Morgan Roth, the Motor City Madmouth. Glad to have you with us tonight, and we have ourselves a great crew here tonight. And yes, we do have a very good crew tonight. Great, can't, and we're pleased to be joined by Candy Ebling, and Candy Ebling takes care of everything for the South Florida Tribune. So, Candy is taking the time out tonight to do a little bit of broadcasting, and we are so thrilled to have her. Let me tell you one thing about Candy: she's our photographer, the jack of all trades, and of course, tonight she gets to wear the broadcasting cap. Candy, welcome to the big show.
Thank you, Motor City Madmouth Scott.
So, and of course, we bring Mr. Charlotte Bats, Rick Curti, otherwise known as Mr. Opinion. Welcome.
Thanks, guys. I'm glad to be here.
All right, well, just so you know, folks, the name of this program is The Damage is Done. And if you want to know what it is, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure it out. There will be no Major League Baseball, at least for the first week of the season, because they could not agree to a collective bargaining agreement by the 5 o'clock deadline. In fact, the players unanimously rejected the owner's latest proposal. Now, I want to point out a couple of things that I think are important to address offhand. First of all, nobody's feeling sorry for the players, okay? You got issues out in the Ukraine, people dying, civilians out there. So if the players are looking for sympathy, they're not getting it from me, you, or anybody else. We have people out there dying, and I can only say prayers for those folks out in Ukraine. Where could that eventually lead to? Higher gas prices. Please, let's hopefully we can put that off a little bit. And me being from a union state from Michigan, okay, where the auto workers are present, you know what? I understand what a union is, but I'll tell you what, even the unions back in Michigan weren't singing to the tune of billionaires versus millionaires in this scenario. So, with that said, what I want to do at the beginning of the broadcast is compare 1994 to 2022, and then I'm going to have Candy and Rick incorporate some things as well. 1994, okay, you've lost the World Series, the end of the Montreal Expos. Major League Baseball Commissioner Bud Selig was determined to break the union. And I got news for you. He did a pretty good job making them cave if he was willing to give up the union. You needed Sammy Sosa, Mark McGwire, and Cal Ripken Jr. to save the sport. Say what you want about Sosa and McGwire. Okay, you want to call them cheaters? Fine, do so. It's obviously they're not getting in the Hall of Fame because of that, but they were money makers. So, as far as I'm concerned, and I got to tell you folks a little story about Sammy Sosa. I worked with him in 1987 as a member of the Gastonia Rangers, and I was the director of public relations. I had a great relationship with Sammy. I really did. We worked together for an entire year. And one of my favorite stories I like to say later on is during his career when he landed with the Chicago Cubs, I ended up getting a one-on-one interview with him. I had to pull a few hoops with the Cubs PR people when I said I was his PR person. The lady didn't believe me, so I screamed to a woman, okay, across Joe Robbie Stadium. And when she finally saw the look on his face, I got that one-on-one interview. You know what? Say what you want about Sammy Sosa being a cheater. The only thing I can hold him accountable will be for court bats because he got caught there. But I don't want to get into a steroid conversation. But my relationship with Sammy Sosa, I was proud that him and McGwire helped get baseball on track during the 1998 home run chase. And I know that MLB, when they thought about the probability of replacement players, okay, couldn't take the chance of ruining Cal Ripken Jr.'s streak, which would eventually get broken on September 6th of 1995, and obviously the highest rated game ever with the California Angels on ESPN. So let's continue to talk about the fact that there were no sympathies then. Candy Ebling has a few interesting stats that she'll get to in a moment about attendance beforehand. Now over to 2022. Okay, the owners bit the bullet, okay, during the pandemic. No fans, okay? And now obviously when you talk about there is no appeal to the next generation because the average fan base is 57. So again, all the owners figure to lose might be the local TV revenue at the end of April, but the fans are not going to pay any more to attend games. They're way too high in the first place. What do you have going back in 1994 versus now? people have more things to do. There was no entertainment. You had a lot more to do with entertainment. And of course, as I mentioned, the Lou Gehrig streak was important, and you had social media. With that said, Candy, why don't you give everybody an overview about statistics before the 1994 devastating strike that wiped out the postseason?
Well, one of the interesting, as I was preparing for the show, one of the things that I was researching, and it said that back in 1994, the average game attendance was 31,256. After the strike in 1995, the average dropped to 25,000 per game. That's an average attendance drop of 20% from the strike. So we only can guess what the attendance figures are going to drop for this time, because there's so many people that are upset that there is going to be a work stoppage. I mean, think about it. We missed out on all the spring training games. I feel bad to be honest with you, I feel bad for Florida and for Arizona and all the industries that are around there that really rely on the spring training games and the revenue that they're missing out on. The rest, the people aren't going to those places because of the spring training.
Well, you got to remember, too, a lot of these places, both in Arizona as well as Florida, invested a lot of money into first-class facilities, right, Rick Curti? Knowing full well that, let's face it, Arizona landed a bunch of teams, and many of them left the Grapefruit League to the Cactus League. And I've had a chance to see all of them in the Cactus League. And I'll tell you what, Candy, when we were out there, let me tell you, weren't all those facilities pretty good?
Oh, they were. But all the people that work at those facilities, they don't have those jobs this year.
And the weight rooms, the offices are unreal. So, Rick, I know the one thing that we've talked about, one of the sticking points that this sport definitely needs is a salary cap, because you have to talk about the have and the have-nots.
Yeah, I've been telling people that Major League Baseball needs a salary cap the last 10, 12 years, and people are like, oh, no, but they really do, because these contracts have gone so ridiculously high, and, it's turning people off because, nobody cares right now that there's a lockout. Nobody is sympathizing with the players who are making $20, $25 million a year. And I remember the 1994 strike when they canceled the World Series, and when baseball did come back, the fans didn't show up. And if they did show up, they had signs calling them greedy and all these things. So people, and now it's even, to me, I think to be even worse, because we didn't have social media at that time. We didn't have the internet. We couldn't stream games on your telephone, or we didn't have YouTube. We didn't have all that stuff. So the world has changed, and the world has gotten younger.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And I've got a comment here from Michael Arango, and he says he left baseball after the great strike, and I never came back unless my pathetic Mets are revoked. The LOL, meaning he's laughing pretty good. So Michael Arango's paying attention to the show, and we welcome all comments on here, and we will read as many of them as we can on the show. So it definitely turned off a lot of people. I want to bring up something that Evan Drelich brought up here about the MLBA's latest offer in terms of minimum salary, because this is really important. $725,000 with increases of $20,000 in the first few years of a deal, a source said, then a different increase later. MLB has offered $675,000 with $10,000 increases that the offer was made yesterday. Folks, okay, I don't care about Latrell Sprewell, but the reality is you can feed your family on $675,000. Sorry, folks, nobody's getting a whole lot of sympathy. $725,000, that doesn't matter. And another thing that Drelich points out is that MLB's best and final offer before pulling down games for an MLB official is a pre-arbitration bonus pool of $30 million, was up $5 million from before. No change on the CBT thresholds, and the minimum salary starting at $700,000, going to $740,000 over the course of the deal, and the Player Association starts at $725,000. That's a lot of money. It really is.
I'd take that any day of the week.
Yeah,
you and a lot I wouldn't mind. People. I wouldn't mind.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is you're talking six figures, talking real six figures. Now, I understand one of the things that the players are looking to see accomplish. And I think this does have to happen with certain organizations. Is a minimum salary needs to be teams need to be encouraged to spend a little bit more. You'll be lucky to get 40, 50 million dollars, okay, for a team that's winning. Now, let me tell you, mind you, those small market teams are going out there and spending their money wisely. But if you have to raise the ceiling floor to 75 million so that teams are a bit more competitive, you know what? I might understand that a little bit more, because the last thing any particular franchise wants to go out there and see is their team, doesn't even make it to the All-Star break, even competitive.
Well, and they're talking about the fact that teams are tanking and not tanking, and they don't want to see tanking anymore. That's part of this, all of this, in this labor agreement, because they're afraid that that's going to taint the game, and they don't want to taint the game.
Yeah, it's like the NFL when you see teams lose purposely. I remember when Andrew Luck was going to when he was going to be the number 1 pick, and it was called "Suck for Luck," and you see all these teams purposely losing, and baseball don't want to do that. They want to do like the NBA, where they have the ping pong, where where a team who doesn't have the worst record will automatically get the number 1 pick. It's determined by a ping pong type of thing. So I know that's what they want to do. I think that would be a great idea, because I hate to see teams tank, because you can tell when they're trying to lose on purpose.
Well, let me ask you both a question, and I'm really curious. I know it was Bud Selig's intent to break the union. He pretty well near came close, and it's hard to believe that we have a work stoppage here, because we're back to the past, certainly not back to the future. But Candy, I'm going to start off with you, and it's interesting how you're wearing a Milwaukee Brewers cap, because obviously Bud Selig owned the franchise, and that's your neck of the woods. So do you think, with that said, okay, I'm going to start with you, Candy, all right, that Rob Manfred might be taking a little bit of a page out of his mentor's book, looking to break the union?
I think he might. I don't know that he'll accomplish that. I don't think the players will allow that, but I do. There's always been some animosity between the players and the union, or the union and the owners and stuff like that. And so I could see where he's trying to do it. I just don't see it happening.
Rick, what about you?
Yeah, I don't see it happening either. And what's sad about it is that he's very, very disliked by a lot of the players. If you see during this lockout, people have criticized him. Players, Jock Peterson was like pretty much making fun of him, how they're going to expand the playoffs and we should all get participation trophies. Rob Manfred ain't making any friends right now with the fans or the players, and I don't think that he's going to break this union at all.
All right, so let's go back to what saved baseball initially. I think this is just unbelievable stuff. Okay, and again, I alluded to it earlier in the broadcast. I'm going to bring it up again. Okay, again, we talked about Sosa and McGuire. Everybody's accusing them of doing performance-enhancing drugs. Sosa theoretically that way, because we all know how the body changes occurred, and on the surface it looked that way. We know McGuire's admitted to using the performance-enhancing drugs. But we're going to go back to the 1998 home run chase, because we all know it was one for the ages, that McGuire and Sosa broke Roger Maris' 61 mark by slugging 70 and 66 respectively. Let's at least mention, Candy, did you at least enjoy the chase?
It was exciting. I mean, I remember going to the ballpark and seeing them. I remember that they broke into some of local TV and said, guess what? He broke this record and he's at this. And on the news, that be the first thing, the story that they would lead in. And listen, I lived in Milwaukee. You're talking about Cardinals and Cubs. So you're talking about rivals of us. But that was the lead story going into the newscast at, on the hour. Who hit what, and did they get a hit? Did they get a home run or not? That was always exciting.
Well, you, Rick?
Yeah, I remember watching it. They broke in. I remember Steve Traxel was the pitcher for the Cubs, and he hit the home run, and people were excited. And I was a young kid at that time, and I loved McGuire and Sosa, and I didn't really think about it, because I guess maybe I was a little naive and didn't want to believe all that stuff. But it was exciting because I remember my dad always talking about Roger Maris breaking Babe Ruth's record and the asterisk and, yada, yada, yada. And then I get to see it broken not once, but twice by two different players in the same year. I think that's what made it so historic.
Well, let's not kid ourselves, okay? The owners profited dearly from this because the fans would come to games early. They would watch these guys in batting practice. As a result, the concession stands are making out all right. The souvenir stands made out. So the owners are making good money financially. I mean, that's serious. You can open your gate 3-4 hours in advance, okay? And you can go ahead and pile in all that extra revenue because of batting practice? Really?
People
Yeah,
wanted a piece of the action. They wanted a piece of history. They wanted to catch a ball off one of their bats to say
yeah.
they had a piece of history.
And the
Well,
owners knew that they were taking steroids. They didn't care because it was bringing fans back and they're making money off of it. So they turned a blind eye to it. And if you don't believe me, go read Jose Canseco's book Juiced, which I really highly recommend. That is an amazing book.
yeah, actually, I had that book in my office here at home. Now, because I can tell you right now, say what you want about Sosa McGuire, but I got news for you. Their accomplishments are still revered, regardless of how you want to talk about what subsequently happened, and they didn't even sniff Cooperstown at all. Now, let's go on to the Cal Ripken story. I think that's probably the one thing that probably enabled us to go ahead and make sure that integrity wasn't taken away. And the Cal Ripken story being what it was, okay? You've got a guy that had they have had replacement players, and he wasn't going to play. That streak would have been broken. And if you think that would have gone ahead and wrecked baseball, losing that streak because of this, go figure.
Yeah, I mean, I remember that game. Living in Los Angeles, so I had California Angels baseball, and that was the game tonight. Was the Orioles and the Angels, and it said, after 5 innings, it'll be an official game, and he'll break this record. And I remember my dad again always telling me that's a record nobody will break. And I remember telling people, yeah, this guy hasn't missed a game in 18 years, and they play like over 160 games. People didn't believe me. So he's never missed a game. In 18 years, he has not missed one baseball game. And he plays one of the most demanding positions in all of baseball in shortstop. And so he's a great ambassador. Like, I'm a huge Lou Gehrig fan, but I'm a big Cal Ripken fan as well. So it was one great legendary ball player replacing another legendary ball player. And I was so happy to see that record broken because that was like a legit record. No steroids, no cheating, no nothing. Total hard work, consistency, and totally legit.
Well, as I reiterated before, okay, the fact of the matter is that on ESPN, okay, that game still ranks among one of the network's most watched games. Michael Arango has a comment that he mentions that he grew up watching Roger Clemens and Barry Bonds play and smash records while MLB turned a blind eye for the rating. Good point, Mike. Thanks for bringing that up. Again, it was okay to do it then, okay, when baseball was in trouble, but now these guys here, Clemens and Bonds, and we can get into another conversation about whether they belong in the Hall of Fame. And I know we've done it on previous shows. Will they get in by the Veterans Committee? Well, we'll find out at some point or another. But when we talk about Sosa McGuire, there's no doubt you had to bring in Roger Clemens and Barry Bonds, Smasher Records. And again, Major League Baseball looked the other way. Mike Arango, thank you very much for bringing that up. We appreciate it. Okay, Candy, so let's talk about Roger Clemens and Barry Bonds.
I know people say that they shouldn't be, or should they be in the Hall of Fame. Any way you slice it or dice it, they're a part of history. Whether you agree with how they got there is another. And I think there should be a section of the hall that talks about what they did, how they accomplished it, and maybe what they did to get what they used to help them get there. I get that, but it's a part of history that you can't change. And why erase it? I mean, that would be like erasing part of the US history that we don't like because we did things the wrong way.
Well, it's funny how you mentioned that because Bob Costas, formerly of NBC and now with MLB Network, has been talking about that, Candy and Rick, for the longest time, that they think that these guys should get in there. We'll put them in a separate wing. And the fact that you even brought it up is another reflection exactly what that you're talking about the history of game. And now it is my plan at some point later on this summer, and I do want to give some prompts to some of our partners out there as well. I'll have a moment. Our folks over at Sideline Sports, we've been working with these guys a little bit here and there. John Shear, JB Ellis, Jake Malik, and Eric C. Wilson have been helping us promote our shows as well. And I'm actually hoping to work with them during the football Hall of Fame coverage. But the plan is for Candy and I to go to Cooperstown, and I've been there. If you haven't been to Cooperstown, my God, you got to get there. So, Rick, go ahead, give us your opinion on this.
Oh, about steroid users, I've like I said, I haven't backed down from it. They should not be in there. I'm so disappointed that they did put David Ortiz in because he was on that list with Alex Rodriguez for steroids. And he got in because people like him. He's Big Poppy. He's got a great personality. He's lovable. And Bonds is not very lovable. And Clemens and all that, and so I don't want to see steroid users in the Hall of Fame, and I'm really upset. So my thing is, if you're going to put David Ortiz in, who was on that list for using performance-enhancing drugs, then put Bonds in, then put Roger Clemens in, put Alex Rodriguez in. But for me, I'm old school. I do not want to see steroid users in the Hall of Fame. And if you're going to put them in the Hall of Fame, you need to put asterisks all over their records and say done while using PEDs.
All right, now I want to steer this back to Cal Ripken for a moment, okay? What was so great about that whole thing is watching the 21-30 turn into 21-31, okay? And then you talk about Cal's children, Rachel and Ryan, they threw out the ceremonial first balls. You had President Bill Clinton and Al Gore were at the game. And as I said, the walking around there, shaking hands. And what can I tell you? That was a celebration that baseball definitely needed, and Cal Ripken certainly gave it to him at the time.
Scott, there are very few games that I would say that they would stop the game to celebrate a moment. And that's one of them that I'll never forget. A lot of times when someone hits like a 3,000 hit, they'll stop the game and celebrate. But there are very few moments. That's one I definitely remember them stopping the game and allowing everybody to celebrate. And for him to take his moment, and have his mark on history.
Let me tell you, the fans in Baltimore are great fans. They really are. And, I know they've had a couple of down years lately, but let's not kid yourself. There, for a lot of years, the Baltimore Orioles had I think they've won a couple of World Series, but you had the Earl Weavers of the world, the Brooks Robinson, Jim Palmers. So they're great fans out there in Camden Yards. I've actually saw a Baltimore Orioles game many years ago at the old Memorial Stadium and saw a Ravens game over at the football stadium. Let's continue on a little bit more and talk about today, 2022, because I'm going to say right now, what we didn't have then, what we have now is that social media is going to make MLB and MLBPA look bad. Because here's the thing that's interesting about this day and age, okay? You've got millions of podcasts to complement old school media, so there will be no shortage of opinions. Back then in 94, you had mainly, what do they call it, terrestrial radio, and for a lot of you folks that should know about me, I've been in this business for 42 years, and I got my first start at ABC Radio, WXYZ in Detroit, working a sports talk show. And boy, how the industry has come a long, long way. So when you talk about podcasts all over the place, it's unreal. Now, before I ask you guys to comment on that, okay, Steve O'Brien comments that David Ortiz was really never was really confirmed. He was on a list that was really never 100% confirmed. And Bonds and A-Rod and some others were confirmed as users' risk. So, again, Steve O'Brien. Now, I will say one thing about Steve. I've known him a long time, and he's from the greater New England area, so he probably has a little bit more insight to what he thinks there. But again, this is one of those things where we like to make sure everybody has an opportunity to voice their opinion. And thank you very much, Steve, for bringing that into us. So with that said, Rick, what's your answer to Steve O'Brien's point?
Well, I respect Steve O'Brien's opinion. You're never going to have me come on here and yell and scream and holler at you. We just agree to disagree. I see what he's saying because they abuse steroids, especially McGuire, especially Bonds and Sosa. I mean, they went from like a toothpick and they look like Lou Ferrigno the next season. So there's a difference between abusing steroids and maybe taking some. David Ortiz said he might have taken something, an over-the-counter thing. But to me, you know what you're not supposed to take. They give you a list. They give you phone numbers of doctors to call to see, can I take this? Can I not take that? So they know what to take and what not to take. So I respectfully disagree with Mr. O'Brien, but I like I said, I respect his opinion, and that's what I like about what we do, is that we can respect other people's opinions and have good dialogue and conversation about it.
All right, so let's go back to another point, Candy. We're going to lead off with you at this point. Okay, you got lots of podcasts to compliment the old school media. So, what are your thoughts about all these different platforms that you have out there, Candy, from all these different podcasts and the opinions? Because you're going to have a lot more now than anybody ever will. So, the PR is going to be far worse than it's ever been. Candy, go ahead.
I think social media has changed a lot of how we view the players, how we view the millionaires that own these teams. I think there's a lot more information out there. And I think everybody forms their own opinion and everybody's talking about it because it's the thing to talk about right now. It's sad, but at least it's not as sad as some of the other things we could be discussing in today's world, in what's going on with Ukraine and Russia and stuff like that. So I think right now it's kind of it's a release because it's something easy to talk about that's not as depressing. Yes, it's depressing that someone's arguing about making millions and millions and that the minimum is 700 and some thousand. Like, I'll never come close to that. But it's not as depressing as some of the other things. So I think a lot of people are going to start talking about it. A lot of people already are. It'll be interesting to see the effect it has on like attendance and stuff like that, because we've had the COVID years before this. So fans really haven't been fully back for a full season. So whether they will come back and at what rate, or will it just be TV revenues mainly?
What's your thoughts, Rick?
Yeah, I agree with Candy. There's so much devastation going on in the world, not only with Ukraine and Russia. Gas prices are going up, food costs are going up, housing is going up, and it's kind of a depressing world today. And people want to gravitate towards this lockout and all these other things that have been going on. And, with social media out there now, what's going on now. You can't get away with anything. There's cameras everywhere. So we have cameras on our phones. People take pictures all the time. They go on Twitter, they go on Facebook, Instagram, post pictures, post comments. We can know about how much a guy makes when you hear an owner complain that we're taking food out of his mouth and out of his kids, and you look, oh yeah, this guy made $30 million last year. No one's going to sympathize with you. So 1994 and now 2022 is completely changed because people are with the social media. I mean, all you got to do is go on Google, put in somebody's name, and boop, there it is. Everything pops up, pictures. You get all this information, and so people are more knowledgeable now than they were back in '94.
Well, I'll even take it a step further. Okay, the fans are not going to pay the outrageous cost to go to games. When you factor in the game ticket, the parking, the concession, souvenir stands, they would rather prefer to watch the games at home on the MLB ticket as well. So they don't have to go anywhere. And, in my opinion, I talked about the local revenues that the owners may relinquish in the end. They don't care. Again, you guys talked about it before. They were able to navigate through COVID-19. And let's not kid ourselves, okay? What the players better realize real quick is that when COVID-19 slammed the sports world with no fans attending the games, the owners bit the bullet with the revenue. Do you think that these billionaires are worried about canceling games when there were only 60 played in 2020? Really? I mean, me personally, I would say no. The owners could decide to break the union, and they would. And this time, I know the fans will eventually return because, again, as I told you, they will settle down. Now, whether or not they get the younger fans or not, I don't know. But again, we talk about the average age being 57. But the owners are definitely trying to get a handle on the salaries because they are going to get out of control. And after all, the players are going to continue to lose paychecks. And once the bills don't get paid, who's going to crack? I say the damage is done.
Yeah, I agree. You know, the fans are not. They're fans who haven't come back from '94. They're not going to come back in 2022. They can forget about getting the newer generation, the millennials. They're not interested in baseball. They think it's boring. The games are taking like 3 hours long. We can download them on our phones. And now we have minor league baseball. We have the Atlantic League. We have all these other independent baseball leagues popping up everywhere that people go to. It's like, why am I going to spend $40 when I could spend like $10 to go see my local baseball team right down the street? So I mean, Major League Baseball really needs to wake up, and they're making so much money off the TV deals and the licensing. Major League Baseball's attendance has dropped like the last 6 years, but they're making so much money off the TV deals, and that's right now what they're focusing on, and that's a shame.
Well, don't
Rick,
lose sight of the. I'm sorry, Candy. Don't lose sight of the fact that USFL is going to start up pretty soon. You got March Madness. You have the NFL Scouting Combine, and I got to tell you, I don't care how long it stays out, and I'll tell you why. Me, I have more time to develop the platform, but because of COVID-19, from my standpoint, I haven't been able to get as many one-on-one interviews because obviously everything's limited to Zoom and one-on-ones. Don't get me wrong; any access I can get one-on-ones is appreciated, but it's just not the same situation that it's ever been before. And as a result, you have to acclimate whether times we like or not. Sorry about that, Candy. Go ahead.
no, that's okay. I was going to say, for an average family to go to a game, I mean, if you think about it, an average family, 2, 3 kids, mom and dad, you're easily spending close to $100 just for the tickets, and then you got to pay for parking. And now, of course, you've got to have food or something to drink. And a lot of these venues don't allow you to carry in your own as much anymore. And now all of a sudden, oh, but Dad, I need a baseball, I need a jacket, I need a jersey, and the prices just keep going up and up and up. I will say the one thing that Major League Baseball has been doing is they've been um, they're they have their different giveaways. So like it could be this bobblehead, and that's bringing some of the attendance in, is because some of the giveaways. Oh, get this umbrella, get this shirt, get this mouse pad, or this bobblehead of this famous player of the team. So they're doing different things like that I've noticed.
Well, again, I mentioned at the top of the show, okay, the Montreal Expos bit the bullet, but I don't see the Oakland A's biting the bullet because we always like to joke around. They're probably headed to Las Vegas, and it may be too late for them to build that arena, their stadium out in Oakland, although you never know. That nothing's been decided there. And I don't want to turn this into another Expos conversation. But when you put things in perspective, okay, I'll throw some key words out there that are important to mention. We can't worry. We all know there's going to be backlash. We know there's going to be no sympathy out there. Nobody's going to lose sight of the fact that you had the '94 World Series being canceled. And of course, like I said, I do believe that there is an intent that at some point they're going to break the union. The longer this thing goes on, and the bigger the more, I'd say, the longer it goes on, the chances are the union can get broken, or at least they're going to take a huge hit. I don't think that they can sustain a work stoppage more than 1 or 2 months. I could be wrong. I don't know whether or not the MLBPA has so much money set aside for a reserve fund. That much I don't know, but I got news for you. Once you get your hands dirty in a lockout, you start losing games, things get uglier. And the uglier that they get, okay, we'll see what side caves in. For a lot of you boxing fans, are we looking at Joe Frazier against Muhammad Ali? Okay, those were some battles in the past. Okay, and we have ourselves a heavyweight fight between billionaires versus millionaires. Or what did you say, Rick? Was it what was the line that you gave us? Was it the employees versus?
Yeah, it was. I forgot who it was, but he said this isn't millionaires versus billionaires. It's owners versus workers, and I can see people's. I mean, my eyes rolled up, and you can see the average person eyes rolled up. Like, yeah, I don't remember an employee at Walmart getting paid $20 million a year.
Now I remember Tony Clark. I met him back in, I believe it was in 2000, At that time, I believe he played for Arizona State University, and he was with the Detroit Tigers, and they traveled to take on the Arizona Diamondbacks. And I met Tony. He's a really smart, intelligent guy, and he's certainly the guy that I know that can lead the union. But the question is, at this particular point, there's just so many things going on in the world that it'll be hard for a lot of people to really sympathize with. Again, I know, folks, we talk about it time and time again, but that Ukraine issue out there on the other side of the world, I'm sorry. I mean, people don't want to think about Ukraine, even though it's hard to not think about these folks. And we say prayers, and hopefully all the economic sanctions around in and out of the sports world force the Russians to come to their senses a little bit to get this thing, although who knows how long it'll take, but you can hope. Well, but people are looking for a deviation from what it is, and unfortunately, it doesn't look like baseball is going to go ahead and do that. Folks, I do want to point out to you, okay, that 108 Stitches Baseball Talk, if you're listening to it on the audio side, can be found on Spreaker, Spotify, Apple, Google, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also subscribe to the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel for nothing, okay? And, of course, check it out on the website, www.southfloridatribune.com. Our guest tonight, Candy Ebling. I can't tell you how much we appreciate everything you do. Without Candy Ebling and the magnificent work that she does, with all the content she puts up there in the broadcast, if there's an MVP out there, sorry, Packers fans, okay, you can give it to Aaron Rodgers. I'm giving it to Candy Ebling. She's the MVP on this broadcast, because without her, okay, our job is a whole lot more difficult. So, again, I want to reiterate, folks, okay, that for those of you that are listening to this, you can hear these shows on Spreaker, Spotify, Apple, Google, iHeartRadio, and again, subscribe to South Florida Tribune YouTube channel, and as well as the website, www.southfloridatribune.com. So those are ways to find it. We'll talk about contact information shortly, but I want to just stay on point and make sure that these important things are mentioned here. But again, I guess my question to you, Candy, first of all, are you surprised that it got to this point? I know there appeared to be so much more momentum from last night that they were, what did they have, like 12, 13 hours, 16 hours yesterday? And then they came back around 10 or 11, that it even got to this point that we'd be saying play ball.
What surprises me is that I think we tend to forget that this is a business. We think of it as entertainment and it's going to entertain us, but we forget that it's a business, and there's owners and then there's players that play that are employees, really, and they get paid to play this game. I mean, I know, like, let's face it, when we were little, we all had dreams and aspirations. Oh, I'd love to play, and get paid to play. But it is a business. This is the ugly side of the business, the negotiations. I guess what really surprises me is that this work stoppage started December 2nd. We're now at March 1st. And before like February 20th, I think they'd only had met 4 times.
Right.
That to me is what is really surprising, because they knew that this was coming. They knew that they were far apart, that the sides they don't like each other. They were miles and miles apart on where they were, what was dividing them.
Well,
they couldn't come together sooner.
I'll go a step further, Candy. I remember during COVID-19, okay, and I was talking to Don Mattingly on Zoom calls and the rest of my Miami Marlins colleagues on Zoom calls. They knew that we talked about universal DH being something that I know will ultimately become a reality, that this is going to be an ugly labor situation. So they knew a long time ago, before the 90-day mark, that this one could be a challenging situation. And they had too many issues to overcome and too many bridges apart, Rick Curti, that they were going to get this thing solved in 2 days, knowing that, hey, listen, you know what? I'll tell the players right now, you should try to get everything that you can get, okay? There's nothing wrong with trying to go out there and get it and ask for it. Doesn't mean you're going to get it, but you might as well, hey, you got to live with this collective bargaining agreement for a while. You don't want to sign off on something that you're going to regret later on. I give you credit for doing that, okay? But the question is, do you have the staying power to be able to have the sacrifices that you end up settling for something and it costs you a whole lot more money? With that said, Rick Curti, why don't you go ahead and elaborate on that?
Yeah, like I say, you're not going to get any sympathy from the fans. These guys are so rich and powerful and it's kind of crazy for us normal people to see the astronomical money that these guys get. And so you're not going to get any sympathy from that, So, but I understand what they're trying to do. They want to get rights, like everybody else wants to get rights. They want to see what's in their best interest, and it's a business. Baseball and sports is a business. We look at it as entertainment. It's a business, But they knew this about 2 years ago. This could have been resolved long, long. I mean, in 2 years they knew that this was going to be a problem, and for them to meet, I mean, they had a meeting with it lasted 15 minutes. So there's no urgency for them to play if there's a work stoppage, and you're getting and it's guaranteed money you're getting, even though they're not getting paid, they still got money from the past, and you're making $30 million a year. It's easy, and when you're a multi-billionaire, hey, I could take 2, 3, 4, 5 years off. It's fine. They make all their money off the TV deals and the licensing. So I just don't see any urgency in their part to get
Rick,
this resolved.
Rick, you bring up a very interesting point. Think about this, Candy, okay? Number one, baseball and basketball get guaranteed money, and hockey do. But the NFL, they don't. They're basically on one-year contracts. They can be cut and restructured at any time. And baseball, no matter how bad you perform year to year, you're going to get paid X amount of dollars anyways. Now, I know there's no middle class in baseball, high, low. And, and again, we can talk about career spans between 4 or 5, depending on this. And then, of course, we talk about international players bringing the labor rates down, which we're not going to get into a lot because there's an awful lot more layers to this whole thing. But if any players association be upset, the National Football League, they only basically play on 1-year contracts, right, Candy?
That's true. There's a lot of things about this that have really tainted some of my thinking, and one of the things that I want to reiterate is I think as a society we have a hard time working together for the end goal. We've become such a me society, and I want to say it starts in politics. Not that I want to make this a political debate or anything like that, but you have two sides, and nobody wants to help and meet in the middle. And I think that's a problem, not only with this labor agreement, but with our society and everything.
What about you, Rick?
Yeah, I agree. It is turning into like a political fight. You have one party that believe in one direction, and you have another that believe in a total different. And instead of saying, "Hey, we were elected by people, let's work together and meet in the middle," but they don't. They just throw mud at each other, and that's what these negotiations remind me of. It's just politics. You got the players on one side that want this, and you got the owners on one side that want this, and they can't meet in the middle, and they're not even thinking about the people who go and support them, and that's the fans. The fans have totally are being ignored in all this, and none these fans. To me, it seems like you're either going to be on the player's side or the owner's side, and the normal fan is like, I'm on nobody's side because you're making millions and millions of dollars, not only but also in commercials and all this stuff. And I'm working like at Walmart, or I'm working at a place where I'm getting barely minimum wage and barely can put money, food on the table. And so you have no sympathy from either. And instead of just thinking about the fans and let's get this result, this should have been done 2 years ago when they knew that this collective bargaining was going to expire. They didn't. So to me, there's no urgency on their part because they got what they got, and the ones that are losing out on all this is always the fans.
All right, so I'm going to ask you. Go ahead, Candy.
Break down each individual item that you are disagreeing on and work on finding a middle ground on each of them. One of the grounds the players might have to give up a little more space, but then on one of the other sides, the owners have to give a little more. Work to make baseball fun again and to bring the fans and have games.
All right, so I'm going to ask you both a couple questions, okay, before we wrap this show up, okay, and that's this. And you know what? We need to leave you folks out there, hopefully, even after we go off the air, you'll be able to provide your comments as well. And I do want to thank everybody that has participated on this broadcast for giving us their comments. Mike Arango, once again, and Steve O'Brien, and we appreciate you. Dominic Riggs has a message here, but I don't quite understand what it is. But thanks for Dominic for paying attention nonetheless. So I'm going to give you guys a couple questions, and for those of you out there that are watching and listening, okay, that's this. First of all, Rick, we'll lead off with you. Of course, lead off is a popular term in baseball. Okay.
Gotcha. I love it.
Was that a pun intended? No, but it kind of works out well. Okay.
Yeah.
So, Rick, whose side are you on? The owners or the players?
I'm on the fan side. I'm not really on either side, to be quite honest.
But this
But if I had
question
to
wasn't
choose
none
one,
of the above. This was not a none of the above. Don't give me your
yeah.
Mount Rushmore
Okay.
that you can add 5 versus 4.
All
Okay,
right.
because I know you've tried to skirt that question in the past. I'm giving you an A
Gotcha.
or B, not C or none of the above. Of course, you know, for all of you folks that like taking tests, that's a trick question. But this is a direct question like true, false,
Gotcha.
A and B. Okay, just messing with you, Rick. Mr. Opinion. Okay, I'll repeat
Gotcha.
it again.
All
Owners
right.
or players? Who would you?
I would say the players, because the owners are these are billionaires, okay? We're talking about billionaires, who have been billionaires all their life and probably grew up as billionaires as children. And they're being so greedy right now and want so much control right now. And some of these players just want to get like some rights, like, hey, we want to see this in baseball, we want to see that. I like to be more compensated here. And some of these owners are just saying, well, we're going to throw some breadcrumbs at you. And of course, when the players union turned it down, to me, it's making the players look bad, and the owners say, see, we're not these mean, greedy billionaires. It's the players who are the problem. So I'll side with the players on this.
What about you, Can?
I'm going to say the players this time, only because I'm an employee, and as an employee, I'd like to get as much as I can while I'm working and as healthy as I am. So I can see the players' side where they want to increase, and we have to look at it not just from the superstar that has the super max contract. We have to look at it from the players the everyday players that are making the league minimum, or the backup, we have to look at it from their standpoint of view, because I think the players union is starting to step up for some of them, as opposed to just stepping it up for the big money making guys.
Okay, and you know what I'm going to do for all intents purposes? I'm going to
disagree.
I'm going to go with the owners, and I'll tell you why. Because number one, okay, if we were talking about a $20,000 job, maybe a $100,000 job, maybe I probably would go the other way. But don't sit here and tell me $675,000 isn't a little bit of coin. Obviously, I know you have an agent involved in case, and a lot of these guys will get paid more, but they get guaranteed money. We know who's management, we know who's labor. Now, do I understand the other side, where some of the middle people aren't going to get paid as much? No, but I'm going to stay on the side of the owners with this. But I'm glad that you guys certainly provided some outstanding opinions, taking the other way. So with that said, my final question is this, okay? Then we'll talk about introductions, okay? And how everybody can find each other. Rick Curti, we're going to lead off with you, buddy. Yes, the word lead off, okay? And Candy, no, you're not a pinch hitter. You're going to be a regular person on the broadcast.
Clean up?
Oh, there you go.
Pinch hitter. Doesn't make any difference, but you're both jack of all trades, okay? But Rick, how long is this dispute going to last?
Oh my goodness. I thought they were going to get this wrapped up soon, but apparently they're not. I would not be surprised if they cancel the whole season, to be quite honest with you.
Really? You think the whole season?
And I just, like, to me, they just don't care about the fans. They got their money, and it's all about power here, power there. And I would not be surprised if they cancel the season. It's just a lot of arrogance on the owner's part. They just think that, hey, we're bigger than anything. The fans will eventually come back. We got them back from 1994. They're eventually going to come back. So if not the whole season, I would say like half the season. So I think this is going to drag on for a long time, and it's going to leave a bad stain in the game.
You got more moves than the best running back I've ever seen. You said a lot of nothing. If I were going to put you in the situation, Rick, about how many days, you would go out there and find the best running back on the planet, get around every question I have. Sometimes you're worse than a cotton picking player that I've had to deal with in a locker room here that
It's
goes in, and I
politics.
can ask you the same question. I know you play the player role. So give me, again, folks, I hope you have a lot of fun because I like to give Mr. Opinion a hard time. But all right, we'll try to simplify the question to Rick Curti. And I got to tell you one thing before I do that. Many years ago, when I first started in this business, I had the good pleasure of interviewing O.J. Simpson back in the 80s. Let's not talk about later on, okay? And I was a young reporter and asked the same question 5 different times, and O.J. gave me his compliment. And when you're a young writer who appreciates a good word from a celebrity, you take it. So I'm going to go ahead and try it again, Rick. How
All
many
right.
days, months, or whatever will this go on?
I'll say 2 months.
60 days, 61 days.
Yes.
All
Yes.
right. All right, Candy, can you do a little better on the simplification process?
You know, if you would have asked me this question yesterday, I thought, the way that they met and the longevity of their meeting, considering some of their meetings early on were 7 minutes long, I would have said, they were going to get it done. And the fact that they didn't and they extended it and now they say they've canceled 2 weeks and they're still far apart, I'm going to say a month.
Okay.
I think that after that long that they're going to have so much pressure on them from players that if they don't, they're going to go out and get other jobs and do something else, because some of the league minimum players or the rookies, they can't afford to not be working.
Well, it's funny how you mentioned that. Bryce Harper was joking around on Instagram about wanting to play in Japan, and we talked about the Baltimore Orioles.
That'd be great.
Okay, and there's a guy by the name of Adam Plutko who actually couldn't make the Orioles, and he ends up playing in Korea. And I follow Adam Plutko on Instagram because he has a nice wife, a young child, trying to continue to play professional baseball. And Adam's going to be playing in Korea. And I remember during the hockey dispute, a lot of those players played overseas in Russia and in Europe. So yeah, I mean, but you're not going to see Bryce Harper overseas.
He could come to Gastonia, play for the Honey Hunters.
Yeah, right. No, I knew you. I was waiting for that one. But I'm going to anticipate about 60 to 90 days on this one, at least 60 to 90. We might be getting into June territory like we did with the pandemic, and we'll just see what can happen. I will point out, though, when we talk about the NFL, as we wrap this show up, I can remember when you only have a 16-game season, how Joe Montana and a lot of the major players walked the picket line, and the NFL's union did get broken up. But yeah, now I don't know whether there's waivers that allow these players to play anywhere else during a situation like that. I don't know. I'm not a legal guy. I'm not going to pretend to be one. But, Bryce Harper was joking around about it, playing in Japan. It'll never happen, folks. But let the Japanese people at least think it probably could. But you never know. I'm going to go 60 to 90. And you know what, Rick and Candy, you are right. Okay. When I ask you what side to take, players and the owners, I gave you an A or B, but we all know the fans are the ones that are going to suffer the most. And it's a shame that we haven't learned anything from 1994 to now. But that doesn't talk about all the other people that were involved before. Michael Weiner was a pretty good guy that ran it for a while, and they had learned from the past mistakes. But now you got Tony Clark, who will be mentioned in the same breath as Donald Fear. And, again, strong personalities, we kind of know where that's going to go. I know we've touched on a lot. It's a very detailed subject. And, you're only getting about an hour with us, but you can rest assured you're going to be getting a whole lot more of it from everybody else. So with that said, can't thank you very much, Candy, for being on the show. I knew you were going to be something like Robert Redford called the natural, because indeed you definitely are. Okay. And she's talking about the Field of Dreams, and she's doing a good job bringing it to light. And Rick Curti, we all know that we are going to get that Gastonia Honey Hunters in, and we know Charlotte Bats is coming up in a moment. But as we wrap up this show here, I will tell you right now, folks, okay, I do want to put my heart and out there to those folks out in Ukraine. I know we've talked about it. And another thing I should point out too, folks, don't take COVID-19 lightly. There's a lot of this stuff going out there that you have to be conscious of. So with that said, Rick, why don't you let everybody know how they can get a hold of you?
Well, you can contact me on my website, www.charlottebats.com. My email is cltbatsbaseball@gmail.com. I'm also on Facebook at Charlotte MLB. I'm also on there at Charlotte Bats Baseball. I'm also on Instagram at Charlotte Bats. I'm on Twitter at Charlotte Bats, and I'm on LinkedIn under Rick Curti, Curti.
All right, Candy, you want to go ahead and give some Tribune references?
I would love to. So you can visit us at www.southfloridatribune.com, SOUTHFloridatribune.com. Read any of our materials, see all of our broadcasts, go to the gallery, see some of my pictures. If you want to get a hold of us, you can email us at southfloridatribune@gmail.com. Catch us on Twitter at Tribune South. Catch us on Facebook, South Florida Tribune. We would love to hear your comments. If you have any comments, if you have any show ideas that you'd like to see, please let us know. We'd love to hear from you.
Folks, this girl makes my job easy. If I say I'm at a loss for words, it's only at the end. It's because of her. But you know what? I got news for you. I don't have a whole lot more to say about it. And I hope for those that are watching this show here down with the ticker, you can, again, the ticker will tell you, subscribe to South Florida Tribune YouTube channel as well as our prompts on Twitter as well. So meanwhile, it's been a great opportunity to bring Candy back on. And I got news for you. She will be back on again. Rick, we have some business to take care of on Thursday night. And I know you appear a couple of times a week. And more importantly, Rick, I want to say thank you very much for doing a tremendous job on social media, making sure all the content that Candy puts up on the website gets spread around all the social media. So, I'm proud of both of you guys tonight. We hope everybody out there has enjoyed this edition of 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. I wish we had better news to talk about the baseball labor situation, but you know what? It was inevitable, and now it's become to fruition. It'll just be a matter of how long it'll take to resolve. Meanwhile, we have a lot of great show ideas coming up on all the rest of our broadcasts. So, on behalf of Rick Curti, Mr. Opinion, and Candy, what can I say, Candy? You've been phenomenal. The Brewers and everybody in Wisconsin that are watching this broadcast should be really, really proud of you. You've done a great job. And folks, I'm just who I am, okay? So take it, whatever it's worth, the Motor City Madmouth. So once again, thank you very much for joining us on this edition of 108 Stitches Baseball Talk, and we will catch you on our next broadcast. Good night, everybody. Be safe.
Good night.
Good night.